Ukraine has just 2 weeks until total collapse, and Putin's main offensive hasn't even started yet. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of the European leaders this weekend. Europe is freaking out over this weekend. They need to prepare to send troops to Ukraine right now, or Ukraine will fail. That's what Europe is talking about. These are the words coming out of these crazy leaders, and they've lost their freaking minds. You'll be able to tell your kids where you were when these globalists pushed us into World War III. It won't happen, by the way, like World War II. Right now, it's happening in multiple spots, on multiple fronts, on multiple continents, across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. This is not your grandfather's World War. So tonight, Ukraine is just days away from total collapse. EU's chief diplomat is almost begging for NATO boots and weapons on the ground in Ukraine right this minute, or BlackRock and Vanguard and all the Western companies that are benefactors are going to lose out of billions of dollars in resources that they hoped to pilfer and steal from Ukraine if Russia takes total control. Quote, without arms, supplies from the West, Ukraine will capitulate in 2 weeks. That's from EU's chief diplomat Borrell. Now, 2 weeks. Putin's offensive hasn't even started yet. Now that the ground is firmed up and actually not wet, that's when this is going to happen. This is the calm before the storm. Colonel McGregor says, quote, Ukraine is running out of soldiers at this point, and reports indicate they are losing 500 to 800 per day. And the Russian offensive has not even begun. This place is nearing collapse, he says.
The Ukrainian force has been annihilated. They've lost over 600,000 dead on the battlefield. There's nothing left. The place is falling apart.
He's right. In fact, this weekend, an entire Ukrainian battalion was destroyed, killed. That's 1,500 soldiers killed on the Ukrainian side. And a battalion, you could give or take a few hundred people, is about 1,000 individuals, so more than a battalion's worth wiped out in one day. As the Blitz writes, the Western military-industrial complex is putting pressure on politicians, including Biden and his administration, to keep the cash cow alive by prolonging the conflict in Ukraine. They don't care about the people of Ukraine, as we've long covered here on the show. They don't give a shit about the people of Ukraine. They care about the money. So what's the goal here? The other part of this goal is to topple Putin so we can steal their resources, enrich the military-industrial complex. That's always been the plan. As Colonel Mack says, this is absolute madness.
Russia, in the last 2.5 years, has built up an enormously powerful and successful force. This is battle-hardened, well-equipped, well-led, well-trained, highly disciplined. The Ukrainian nation has been destroyed. Why? Because it's mortgaged to our vanity in the West. Russia must be taught a lesson. Russia must be destroyed. Putin must be removed. Really? Why? Well, because we've decided that we want to strip Russia of its resources. So we turned Ukraine into a battering ram designed to stab Russia in the heart. Well, the Russians woke up.
Meanwhile, France knows the EU is in serious trouble. That's why tonight I mentioned multiple fronts. France is doubling down on its plan to send boots on the ground, NATO forces into Ukraine to fight Russia, and into Africa to fight Russia because of all of the mineral-rich resource region of the Sahel in Africa. They want those resources. They don't want Russia to get their hands on it. And French President Macron says Europe right now better ramp up its military or Europe is about to die. I mean, these are really strong words from these leaders. Europe is about to die? If they send troops, all bets are off. They know Putin is about to attack Ukraine with devastating consequences to end this war. They do not want this going into another dark winter. If NATO gets in the way, all hell is about to break loose. And on top of that, Russian President Putin just sent a devastating nuclear warning to NATO, warning them that if they take one step closer to prepare for all-out war. There's like 5 moving pieces this weekend that are all spiraling out of control. One of the big pieces is nuclear war. I know people who don't understand history will say that we won't go to nuclear war. Occasionally I see comments like that. But Russia is not going to lose a war against NATO. And if their sovereign territory is attacked, Putin is telling us, he's telling us, they will use nuclear weapons against NATO to defend their homeland. The U.S. would do the very same thing, by the way. And of course, we already have twice. So Putin just called out all of these warmongers, telling them that we have all of your weapons coming in from NATO, cataloged and tracked. And he says, by the way, if NATO sends troops to Ukraine to defeat Russia, nukes will hit U.S. decision-making centers, his words, and bases, his words, and we will strike all of your launch sites, Putin's words. France will be disarmed in an instant, he says, and the British Isles will go underwater. Those are the harshest, most direct comments that I think I've heard from President Putin yet. Do you really want to mess with Putin? I mean, you want to tempt fate here? Well, they are. Specifically, French President Macron, whose comments going viral this weekend, doubling down on sending forces to Ukraine. Why?
The French President Emmanuel Macron has reiterated that he hasn't ruled out sending troops to Ukraine. He told The Economist the issue would, quote, legitimately arise if Russia broke through Ukrainian front lines and if Kyiv made such a request.
And today, Russia says NATO is trying to attack the Crimean Bridge again, here on the anniversary of the liberation of Crimea. Overnight, NATO launched ATACMS missiles into Crimea. Russia says they shot them down. And Russia's spokeswoman said yesterday that we will respond with a crushing display of force. So NATO wants to attack the Crimean Bridge again. Will Russia destroy the channel as a response? You know, connecting England to France, that massive tunnel? Will it strike NATO bases across Europe? What game they are playing is total madness right now. But Ukraine might not even be the boiling point. It's Africa, where this war might fully explode. Over the weekend, Russian soldiers showed up in the country of Niger. They rolled into a military base and found U.S. soldiers occupying the base. By the way, these soldiers are not supposed to be there. The United States is not supposed to be there. U.S. and Russian soldiers face to face right now in Niger. I mean, really? This arguably is the first time that this has ever happened. Even the Secretary of Defense had to admit this. American forces are not, I repeat, are not supposed to be there. They are illegally occupying this base.
The fact that we've got Russia as the preferred security partner now means there are Russians behind the wire at Air Base 101. We have Russians on our base somewhere. That would never happen. But the only reason it's happening is because Blinken and Biden are humiliated that their plan failed, that they poured $500 million into this country where now we're being thrown out by the scruff of our neck.
And Niger has asked Russia to come there and secure the country from U.S. and French troops who are trying to steal uranium resources. Will the U.S. back down, or will these be the shots heard round the world? World War III starts in Africa, of all places, over minerals and resources. As investors, we need to pay attention. After all, this is an investment channel, and something big is about to happen here. Either NATO goes home with its tail between its legs and admits defeat, Ukraine fully surrenders unconditionally to Russia. That's the only outcome that Putin will accept, by the way, total unconditional surrender. Or Putin shows the world that he's not bluffing. Do you want to test him?